Caleb stood alone in the marble lobby, the chill of the air conditioning brushing against his skin. It was an impressive building with high ceilings and flickering lights, but today all he could see were the shattered pieces of his dreams scattered around his feet. He glanced around nervously, waiting for his turn to pitch his idea to the investors. As people rushed by him, dressed in sharp suits and perfect smiles, their laughter filled the air like an unwelcome whisper. Caleb adjusted his tie, swallowing hard. He had worked hard, pouring everything he had into this moment. He wanted to prove to everyone that he was worthy, that his startup was worth believing in. But doubts crept in again, whispering in his ear a relentless echo of what-ifs. Then the double doors swung open. A woman burst through, her heels clicking loudly against the marble floor, shattering the moment of quiet tension. It was Samantha, the lead investor known for her tough demeanor and sharp tongue. She was notorious in the industry for crushing dreams before they even took flight. The kind of woman who made the room shrink with her presence. Caleb's heart raced. He felt a sudden urgency, like time was running out. Samantha exclaimed, her voice slicing through the air as she marched across the lobby. She was on the phone, her dark brow furrowed. "I can't believe he let you do that." Caleb flinched. The coldness of her tone felt like a slap. He tried to make himself small, thinking if he disappeared, he might escape the weight of her words. He watched as she paced, her face twisted in frustration. The confident power she exuded made everyone step back, including Caleb. But just as he thought she would continue to fume away, she stopped abruptly in front of him. Her eyes narrowed, scanning him up and down as if he were a puzzle she couldn't solve. She said, pointing a perfectly manicured finger at him. Caleb," he stammered, caught completely off guard. "Caleb," she sneered, the name dripping from her lips like poison. "You should be preparing to pitch, not standing around like some lost puppy." He felt his cheeks flush, shame washing over him. "I am ready, Then why do you look like you're about to faint?" Her voice echoed, making several heads turn. Caleb wished the earth would swallow him instead. Heat rushed into his face as whispers fluttered around him like angry bees. Just when he was about to respond, to defend himself, he heard a series of footsteps behind Samantha. The founder of the company, a respected icon in the industry, stepped out of a side door. His presence transformed the energy in the lobby. The murmurs faded into stunned silence, and even Samantha seemed to lose her edge, standing aside as he approached. With a genuine smile that lit up his face, he walked directly toward Caleb. The crowd parted, creating a path of awe and curiosity. The founder's warm gaze met Caleb's, and for a second, all the noise faded away. Caleb felt his heart skip. He couldn't believe someone like him was about to be recognized by a person of such high caliber. The founder said, extending his hand, "I've heard about your pitch." Samantha stood frozen, her mouth slightly agape. The tension shifted in an instant. Caleb blinked, caught between disbelief and excitement. Finally, he shook hands with the founder, feeling a surge of warmth flow through him, an electric connection that passed between them. Yes, thank you," he stuttered, struggling to find his words, but the founder's encouraging smile made everything feel possible. "Just breathe, you have something valuable to share. Own it," the founder said, giving Caleb a reassuring nod. He felt as if something inside him was awakening, a small flame being ignited by the simple act of kindness. As Caleb launched into his pitch, with each word pouring out of him, he could feel Samantha's piercing gaze shift from irritation to grudging respect. The moment he mentioned a breakthrough idea, he saw her brow soften ever so slightly. The founder listened intently, hanging on to every word, offering silent encouragement through his steady nods. Caleb showcased his passion, detailing every element of his startup. As he spoke, the emotions began to swell, not just from fear, but from something new and alive. People began to lean in, drawn into his vision as if they were being pulled into a story they wanted to hear. When he finished, the silence hung in the air for just a moment longer before the founder clapped, breaking it. "Brilliant, Caleb. I can see the creativity and heart behind what you're doing." Samantha regained her composure but couldn't hide the confusion on her face. She scanned the room, taking in the expressions of everyone around her. Then slowly she nodded. "Yes, it's interesting." The founder interjected gently, a knowing smile on his face. Caleb felt the sudden release of tension in his chest. The founder's support lifted him higher. It was like a lifeline thrown into turbulent waters. It was real. He could do this. Samantha straightened her back, adjusting to the shift. "Well, Caleb, I can admit that you caught my attention. I'd like to discuss next steps," she said, her tone relenting. The weight of her earlier condemnation was gone, replaced by an unexpected acceptance. Caleb blinked, stunned. The room felt like it was spinning, but in a good way. He smiled, feeling gratitude wash over him. Having her approval after her earlier tirade felt surreal, like coming through a storm to see the sunlight shining bright. As Caleb shared a few more thoughts, the founder stepped back for a moment, watching him with pride. He had seen potential and was ready to nurture it. Caleb couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. A door had opened, and no longer was he just standing in the lobby of uncertainty. When things wrapped up and people began to disperse, Caleb found himself again shaking hands, but this time in an atmosphere filled with warmth rather than hostility. The whispers faded away, replaced by genuine conversations. Whether people agreed or not, they were listening, truly listening. He found Samantha standing nearby, a small smile playing on her lips. "You really surprised me, Caleb," she admitted, a hint of admiration hiding behind her previously stern facade. Caleb nodded, overwhelmed with emotion. Tension melted into elation as he realized he had crossed a line into confidence, into belief. He felt lighter, as if all the doubts that had gripped him before were losing their grip, fading with each laugh shared and hand shaken. As he stepped outside the grand lobby into the sunlight, the world felt vibrant and alive. The weight on his shoulders had lifted. The air was filled with possibility. Caleb remembered the way he'd felt just an hour ago, heavy and lost, a stark contrast to how he felt now. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be hurdles and setbacks. But Caleb could now face them. He'd learned a vital lesson today, not only about seizing opportunities, but also about believing in himself. And somewhere deep down, he also understood that sometimes a moment of frustration could lead to something beautiful, a transformation sparked by unexpected hands reaching out in support. Caleb stood frozen in the sleek marble lobby, heart racing, as a whirlwind of chaos erupted around him. It was supposed to be a day of hope, a day where dreams were on the brink of becoming reality. Instead, he felt like a deer caught in headlights, watching as his moments of glory slipped through his fingers. The air was thick with tension, and around him, walls adorned with art seemed to mock his nervousness, just as investors buzzed in little clusters, trading ideas and laughter like currency. A sharp voice cut through the din, drawing everyone's attention. There she was, Samantha, the intimidating lead investor, storming toward him like a dark cloud looming over the sun. People around him fell silent, their gazes darting nervously between her and Caleb. She barked, hands on her hips, eyes blazing. "Do you even know the weight of the moment you're in?" Every word dripped with disdain, echoing off the high ceilings. Caleb could feel the eyes of the crowd boring into him, each stare like a hot poker pressing into his skin. "Look, he stammered, but she cut him off, the disdain in her voice almost palpable. No excuses. If you want this, you need to own it." With that, she turned sharply on her heels and continued her tirade on the phone, leaving Caleb flailing in a pool of embarrassment. Panic welled up inside him. The world around him felt surreal, like being thrust into a scene from a movie where he was the underdog everyone was waiting to root against. He wanted to fade away, to escape into the shadows of the lobby, where he could gather his thoughts away from judgment. But as he shifted his weight, fighting to regain his composure, something unexpected happened. The double doors to the side of the lobby swung open with a quiet but commanding creak. Out stepped Jonathan Miles, the company's founder, a man whose vision had changed the landscape of tech innovation. He carried with him an aura of authority and warmth that instantly captured everyone's attention. Caleb's heart raced anew, not just from anxiety, but also a flicker of hope. Jonathan was known for his ability to see potential in the unlikeliest of ideas. Caleb felt a heat rush through him, igniting a spark inside. Would today be the day that changed everything? Jonathan called out, his voice booming with confidence as he spotted Caleb together with the grim-faced Samantha. "I've been waiting for you." The room held its breath. Caleb couldn't believe what he heard. Was this really happening? This moment, everything felt possible, yet he also felt the pressure of 1,000 eyes watching his every move. He stepped forward, adrenaline coursing through him, and extended his hand. Jonathan clasped his hand firmly, his grip both encouraging and reassuring. "You're going to do great." Caleb's mind cleared as Jonathan's words resonated through him, calming the storm inside. Just as he was about to respond, he felt Samantha shift beside him, her expression shifting from irritation to intrigue. "Jonathan, are you sure? I mean, this is a competitive space," she said, her voice laced with skepticism. Caleb could see the wheels turning in her head as she tried to recalibrate. She wasn't quite ready to relinquish her steely demeanor, but the urgency in Jonathan's tone made it clear she was also hesitant to oppose him. "Absolutely, this young man has something. I can feel it," Jonathan said with a smile that radiated warmth. With renewed confidence, Caleb took a deep breath and began his pitch, his words flowing like water from a tap that had finally been turned on. "I'm here to change how we interact with technology. It's a blend of innovation and emotions." As he spoke, Caleb could see a shift in the energy around them. Jonathan leaned in closer, engaged and intrigued, and even Samantha seemed to relax, her arms crossing now in a way that suggested curiosity rather than skepticism. With every word, Caleb's confidence blossomed. He could see the flickers of interest in the faces of the investors who were once just silhouettes in the background. "Imagine a world where your devices understand you, not just your commands, but your feelings. We can break down barriers in communication and elevate everyday interactions," he continued, his voice steadying. With each sentence, he painted a vivid picture, a future bursting with potential. He talked of real-life examples, how people had connected through experiences, forging paths they'd never dreamed possible. He spoke of technology not as a tool, but as a trusted companion, ready to harness the power of emotion in a world that often felt cold. When he finished, silence hung in the air, a pregnant pause filled with anticipation. Jonathan was the first to break it, his expression a mix of admiration and excitement. "Caleb, you've tapped into something profound." Samantha interjected, regaining her composure as she weighed her words. "I do have questions. What about the market?" Her tone was sharper now, but there was a flicker of interest lingering beneath her critical gaze. Caleb took a moment to gather his thoughts. "Samantha, I understand the concerns. The market is indeed crowded, but what differentiates us is the heart of the approach. It's about building trust, crafting experiences that resonate deeply with users rather than just presenting another gadget. These are connections people are craving right now." As he spoke, Caleb noticed the room slowly lean in, captivated. Even Samantha's posture softened, her skepticism fading. This was no longer just a pitch, it had transformed into a conversation. Caleb's confidence grew as he felt the energy shift in the room, the walls that had once felt imposing now closing around them like a supportive embrace. Caleb felt genuine excitement bubbling up, fueled by Jonathan's belief in him and that the tide was turning. He had started to believe in himself too. After what felt like an eternity, Jonathan nodded approvingly, but Samantha still wasn't sold. "Your passion is evident, Caleb, but what about funding? We need a solid business model to back you up." With a sparkle in his eye, Caleb replied, "Our proposal isn't just about funding, it's about partnership." Samantha crossed her arms, weighing his words, skepticism still hovering behind her gaze, but even she couldn't hide the glimmer of interest now reflected in her eyes. Caleb could sense the shift, the way the breeze outside seemed to penetrate even the thick walls of the building. "I'll say this, if I wanted to invest, I need to see concrete metrics, something beyond a vision. I want numbers, projections, and profiles of potential partners. Show me this can work in practice, not just in theory," she challenged, her voice sharpened but softer than before, an opening hidden under her typically tough facade. Caleb nodded, undeterred. "Absolutely, I appreciate the challenge." With the tension easing, he looked to Jonathan, who wore a proud smile as he glanced between them. This is what happens when passion meets caution, real possibilities take shape. Caleb felt a swell of gratitude for Jonathan's support, thinking back to the moment when he'd felt like a total outsider in the lobby, marked by disbelief from Samantha. The juxtaposition of that feeling compared to how he felt now was like night and day. As time passed, conversations bloomed anew, the room rich with ideas bouncing back and forth. Samantha began to list out the metrics she needed, her voice drawing Caleb further into the possibilities. He listened intently, taking notes, his mind racing with ideas. The sting of Samantha's earlier criticism felt distant, evaporated in this new environment, and he couldn't help but appreciate the irony, how one moment of tension had led to a connection unlike any he had anticipated. In that moment, as they discussed steps forward and potential collaborations, Caleb felt a sense of empowerment flooding through him. The lobby that had once felt like a cage had transformed into a stage, and he was finally ready to own his performance. The founding father of the company had unlocked something within him, igniting a fire he never knew he had. Days turned into weeks, and Caleb went back to the drawing board. The tension that lingered in that lobby became a memory, a stepping stone rather than a stumbling block. He conducted market research, crunched numbers, adjusted projections, and explored potential partners that would align with his vision. And every time he felt doubt creep in, the memory of Jonathan shaking his hand kept him grounded. If Jonathan believed in him, maybe he could start believing in himself too. The journey was far from over. There would be setbacks, of course. But now, instead of crumbling at the first sign of adversity, he approached challenges head-on with determination. Months later, Caleb found himself back in that same lobby, the energy now thrumming with excitement, vibrant with possibility. This time, it was filled with investors who were eager to hear about his wildly successful pitch and audacious plans for the future. As he greeted old faces and new, he caught sight of Samantha standing beside Jonathan. Their presence was welcoming, no longer cloaked in the judgment he had faced before. This time, she wore an approving smile. He knew they would be pivotal to the next chapter of his journey, but more than that, he felt ready, not just to pitch, but to truly shine in the spotlight he had nearly walked away from. The lobby had transformed from a stage of fear into an arena for empowerment, not just for Caleb, but for every person trying to find their way. And as he looked around, he understood the beautiful complexity of that day, how a moment of conflict had breathed life into a dream that could change everything. Caleb was not merely a kid playing dress-up anymore. He was ready to take center stage. And perhaps, just perhaps, in that lobby filled with highs and lows, he had finally found his place in the world. Caleb felt the chill of the air conditioning wrap around him like a cold blanket. He stood in the lobby of a towering skyscraper, the kind of place where dreams unfolded or shattered. Today felt monumental, yet he couldn't shake the pit in his stomach. He was about to pitch his startup idea to potential investors, and everything hinged on this moment. Suddenly, the large glass doors swung open, and in strode Samantha. Everyone knew her, the lead investor with a reputation for being ruthless. Her heels clicked sharply against the marble floor, echoing through the lobby as she stormed past people like an unstoppable force. Caleb felt himself shrinking under her intense glare as she approached the small gathering. "Oh, look who we have here," she sneered, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Mr. Startup himself." Caleb's heart raced, his palms clammy against the fabric of his suit. He hadn't expected an attack before his pitch even started. He opened his mouth to respond, but words failed him, caught like a bird in a cage. "You know," she continued, her tone almost gleeful, "if you want to impress anyone here, you need to show some confidence." Caleb swallowed hard, the weight of her words pressing down on him. Just moments ago, he'd felt excited, fueled by the hope that he could change the world with his idea. Now, that hope felt small and fragile. Her words cut through the air, and Caleb could feel eyes around him turning toward the spectacle. He was the target, and she was the sharpshooter. Desperation tightened in his chest, mixing with humiliation as Samantha continued her vocal onslaught. "Get it together, Caleb. This isn't a casual meet and greet." She leaned in closer, her eyes narrowing. Caleb's face flushed. He wanted to defend himself, to explain how hard he'd worked, the sleepless nights spent perfecting his pitch. But the words choked in his throat, stifled by her fierce presence. Just then, out of the corner of his eye, a figure emerged from a nearby door. Jonathan Miles, the founder of the company, the man everyone aspired to be. He stood tall, an air of warmth surrounding him that lit up the lobby. Caleb's heart soared at the sight. Surely he'd put an end to this moment of torment. Jonathan's deep voice resonated as he approached. "Caleb, great to see you." Caleb could hardly believe it. The founder himself had acknowledged him. Samantha turned, smoothing her expression, perhaps not wanting to appear completely unyielding in front of Jonathan. "Jonathan," she said, her tone shifting, "I'm just making sure Caleb here is prepared for what's ahead." "Yes," Jonathan replied, his voice steady, "but I know Caleb has worked hard for this opportunity." Caleb could feel the tension in the room begin to thaw. Jonathan's words were like a lifeline thrown to a drowning man. He turned to Jonathan, grounding himself in the support radiating from the founder. "Thank you," Caleb managed to say, his voice finding steadiness now. Jonathan encouraged, a genuine smile lighting up his face. Caleb took a deep breath, remembering why he was here. He had a vision, a dream that deserved to be shared. As he began to speak, the tremble in his hands settled as he allowed himself to be enveloped by the moment. With each word, Caleb remembered his purpose. He spoke of innovative ideas, presenting his concept for a community-based app that helped people connect in meaningful ways. "What we're creating isn't just another app. It's an ecosystem where loneliness fades and friendships bloom." As he spoke, he channeled the energy of the crowd. The eyes that had once been judgmental now glimmered with intrigue. Jonathan nodded approvingly, his attention fully focused on Caleb's vision. Samantha, initially skeptical, began to lean forward, her expression shifting from disdain to curiosity. Caleb could see the gears turning in her mind as she considered the prospect of what he was pitching. He continued, citing real-world examples of loneliness and modern disconnection, painting a picture of a world where people no longer felt isolated. With each statistic, each anecdote, he solidified the necessity of his idea. When he finished, the silence was palpable. Caleb felt exposed but empowered, like a bird daring to fly for the first time. Jonathan broke the silence, clapping his hands together. "Fantastic, Caleb, this is what I wanted to see." Caleb grinned, his heart swelling with pride. He felt the air shift as the onlookers turned to Samantha, whose tough exterior was now softening. "Okay," she spoke, her voice more measured. "I can see the potential, but we need to dive deeper into the numbers. What about funding?" Caleb welcomed the challenge instead of shying away. "I've done the market research. There's a massive gap in this sector, and with the right investment, we can dominate." Samantha nodded slowly, her gaze fierce yet curious. She was no longer just a predator hunting for weaknesses. She was perhaps a mentor assessing a potential. The room buzzed softly with conversation, investors whispering among themselves. Jonathan intervened. "I think this is an ideal moment to form a collaboration. Let's not just evaluate, let's build." Caleb couldn't believe it. What had begun as sheer embarrassment was blossoming into validation, turning into a tapestry of hope woven with threads of support. As discussions continued, Caleb felt more grounded. Samantha, despite her initial roar, was shifting her approach. "All right, Caleb," she said, turning to him. "You've got the spark. Let's ensure you have the metrics to back it up." This time, her tone felt like a challenge rather than an attack. The rest of the conversation flew by in a whirlwind of ideas and possibilities. Caleb engaged like an athlete in a game, racing to connect with each question thrown his way. Jonathan's presence empowered him further, and suddenly the same lobby that had felt like a cage of judgment now felt like the birthplace of dreams. It was brighter, alive with potential, filled with possibility where there had once only been fear and doubt. Finally, as the meeting wrapped, Jonathan turned back to Caleb, a glint of admiration in his eyes. "I'm proud of you." Caleb couldn't help but feel as though Jonathan had handed him not just a chance but a belief in himself that he had nearly lost. He felt like he was standing tall in the sunlight, basking in something far greater than a pitch. He felt a part of a community ready to change the world one step at a time. "Thank you," Caleb replied, his voice steady with sincerity. As people began to disperse, he caught Samantha's eyes, and to his surprise, she smiled a genuine smile that said perhaps they were both on this journey together after all. In a moment of reflection, Caleb realized that the path of ambition wasn't just filled with triumphs. It was also marked by the unexpected challenges that tested you, that made you rise, twist, and turn, but ultimately expand. Days turned into weeks, and Caleb worked diligently, collaborating with Samantha and Jonathan, forging ahead with plans and projections. He conducted surveys, held brainstorming sessions, and crafted pitches. Each new day brought fresh challenges, but they no longer seemed daunting. They felt like stepping stones rather than barriers. The initiative transformed into something bigger than himself, a mission that mattered. Months later, as he stood at a podium ready to unveil the app to a larger audience, a familiar buzz filled the air. He caught a glimpse of Jonathan in the crowd, smiling with confidence, and Samantha nodding in approval at what they had built together. What began with tears in the lobby had evolved into a celebration of resilience, of the power to rise above adversity. It was a reminder that every challenge could lead to an opportunity, that even the harshest critics could become allies. As he took a deep breath, Caleb remembered the moments of struggle, the tension, and the triumph. They were not just milestones, but threads woven into a larger fabric that told his story. A story of determination, a story of connection, a story that echoed far beyond the lobby where it all began. With his heart full and ready, he stepped into the light, ready to make the world a little less lonely, one connection at a time. Caleb stood in the busy lobby, anxiously adjusting his cufflinks, heart racing in his chest. His first pitch to a panel of elite investors was about to unfold, and with every passing moment, doubt crept in like a thief. It felt surreal, as if he were standing at the brink of a cliff, staring into a vast unknown. The glass walls glimmered with reflections of suits and smartphones, but all he could see was his own trembling hands. And then the atmosphere shifted. A whirlwind of fury stormed through the lobby as Samantha, the lead investor, entered. She was as feared as she was respected, known for her sharp tongue and fierce demeanor, the kind of person whose presence made the air crackle with tension. She bellowed, her voice slicing through the murmur of conversations like a knife. Heads turned and the murmurs faded into an anxious hush. Caleb felt like a deer caught in headlights. "Where's your confidence?" Caleb's face turned crimson as all eyes rested upon him, his pulse quickening. The weight of her words felt suffocating. "I am ready," he managed to say, though uncertainty laced his voice. Samantha rolled her eyes in disdain. "Ready for what? To stumble over your words? Get it together, Caleb. This is not a game." The heat in his cheeks burned hotter, and all Caleb wanted to do was sink into the floor. He had spent countless nights preparing for this moment, researching, scripting, rehearsing. But standing in front of Samantha, his excitement turned to fear, and he felt the dreams he'd worked so hard to bring to life slipping away. Just as he thought he might crumble under the weight of her scorn, the double doors behind Samantha swung open. Out stepped Jonathan Miles, the company's founder. A figure synonymous with innovation and success, he carried with him an air of authority and warmth. The lobby that felt like an arena of judgment suddenly flickered with hope. Jonathan called out, his voice resonating like a beacon. Caleb felt a rush of relief wash over him. Jonathan's presence was like a gust of fresh air in a stuffy room. As the founder approached, the crowd shifted, creating a path, anticipation hanging thick in the air. "Thank you, Jonathan," Caleb said, his voice steadying. "I really appreciate," Samantha interrupted, her tone shifting as she saw her chance to regain control. "Jonathan, I'm just making sure Caleb here is prepared for the competition." "Investing is serious business," Jonathan replied, shooting a reassuring glance at Caleb. "But you've been preparing right. I know you have an extraordinary idea." Feeling the warmth of Jonathan's encouragement, Caleb straightened his posture as adrenaline pulsed through his veins. He stepped forward, pulling from the depths of his ambition. Samantha's expression flickered. She wasn't completely convinced, but her skepticism began to wane. "Go on," she challenged, now slightly intrigued. With newfound resolve, Caleb dove into his pitch. He painted a vivid picture of a world drowning in superficial interactions, where people longed for authentic connections. As he spoke, his confidence surged. He shared compelling statistics about loneliness in the digital age, anecdotes of people feeling isolated despite living in crowded cities. With every word, the audience leaned in closer. Jonathan nodded approvingly, prompting Caleb to push forward. "We're building a platform that doesn't just connect people, it fosters a community rooted in empathy and understanding." As he shared his vision, a palpable shift swept through the room. Samantha's tough exterior began to soften. She leaned forward, eyes narrowing as if searching for something. Caleb continued, feeling like a conductor guiding an orchestra, the energy rising with every note he played. "Of course, we've done thorough market research," he said, addressing Samantha's earlier critique. of strategies and tools set in place to differentiate ourselves and scale effectively. When he finally finished, silence fell over the room, thick and heavy with anticipation. Caleb's heart thudded loudly in his chest as he awaited their feedback. Jonathan broke the stillness with an enthusiastic clap. "Bravo, Caleb, I can see the passion and potential in your idea." Caleb felt the warmth spread through him, but Samantha wasn't entirely ready to back down. Her competitive spirit was still buzzing. "Caleb, impressive start, but what about actual numbers?" Caleb felt the room tighten around him again, but he stood firm, ready for this challenge. "I have projections that show our potential growth, and already I'm speaking with potential partners who share our vision." With each answer, he could see Samantha reassessing, her scrutinizing gaze softening with curiosity. There was a flicker of respect emerging, a subtle acknowledgement that he might just be capable of more than she had initially given him credit for. "I appreciate your insights, Caleb," she said finally, her voice less sharp. "But you know how ruthlessly competitive this market is. You need to be ahead of the curve at all times." "Absolutely," Caleb replied, his voice steady. "I've studied successful launches and pitfalls in our industry. I'm ready to learn from every challenge and adapt swiftly." As the conversation evolved, the electricity in the room charged. Jonathan stood back, watching with an approving smile as Caleb engaged the investors. What had begun as a confrontation was transforming into collaboration. Samantha, initially the antagonist, had become an ally in assessing the future of the idea. In that unexpected moment of camaraderie, something shifted. Caleb realized that criticism didn't always mean defeat. Sometimes it could mean opportunity. The very feedback that had threatened to crush him now fueled his determination. He could feel Jennifer's intensity morphing into curiosity and acceptance, a true conversation blossoming in place of confrontation. After what felt like an eternity, the meeting drew to a close. Jonathan beamed at Caleb, extending a hand with authentic warmth. "You've done a fantastic job. I appreciate your resilience and creativity." Caleb shook Jonathan's hand and felt a rush of gratitude. Finally, he turned to Samantha, who regarded him with a newfound respect. "You have guts, kid. I'll give you credit for that," she said, her smile genuine yet competitive. "Stay on your toes and we can take this further." Caleb couldn't believe it. What began as a confrontation had morphed into a whirlwind of opportunities. The pain and humiliation of the lobby moment transformed into something akin to triumph. The following weeks were a blur of intense preparation. Caleb worked tirelessly, gathering data, networking, and refining his pitch. His confidence grew with every connection he made and every piece of feedback he incorporated. He learned to embrace the challenges and even found ways to leverage them, turning obstacles into stepping stones. Meanwhile, he and Samantha began working closely together. Her tough love approach forced him to think critically and strategically. She became a mentor, guiding him through the complexities of startup culture and investor mindset. Gradually, this once-wary relationship blossomed into a partnership based on mutual respect. Beyond the boardroom, they shared laughs, exchanged ideas, and began to trust each other's insights. One afternoon, amidst the usual hum of business, Samantha turned to Caleb, her eyes shining with ambition. "You know, I didn't see it at first. But you've proven me wrong. You have something remarkable here." Caleb relished that thought, realizing how far he had come since that moment in the lobby. The journey had been tough, filled with obstacles, but every step, every moment of doubt had forged him into who he was now. Then came the day of the presentation to a larger group of investors. The stakes were higher, the fears more tangible. Standing backstage, Caleb's heart raced. But amidst the anxiety, he clung to the memory of that lobby moment, the fierce confrontation that had sparked a transformative journey. As he stepped onto the stage, the lights brightened and he locked eyes with Jonathan, who stood in the front row, nodding encouragement. He spotted Samantha too, her expression a mix of confidence and pride. In that instant, he felt a rush of assurance wash over him. This time, he was not a deer in headlights, he was a lion ready to roar. With conviction, he began to speak. He poured out his vision, his passion, his story, building a world where connections thrived, not just survived. The room was engaged, the investors leaned in, their attention captivated. As he wrapped up his presentation and the applause began to swell, Caleb smiled, heart soaring. He transformed fear into opportunity, doubt into resilience. The struggle had been fierce, but on that stage, he felt a sense of belonging, a promise of progress on the horizon. As he stepped off stage, his heart still racing, he was met by Jonathan and Samantha, their faces lighting up with pride. Jonathan exclaimed, gripping his shoulder. Samantha flashed a smile, a rare sight. "I always knew you could. Remember, criticism is just an invitation to grow. Embrace it." Caleb nodded, understanding the truth in her words. It had been a long journey, but the moment in the lobby where she had yelled at him ignited a fire that propelled him beyond his limits. He had learned to stand tall against the storm, finding strength in unexpected places and partnerships. As he walked out of that building, the sun shining overhead, Caleb felt a newfound sense of purpose. Every challenge, every word exchanged, especially the harsh ones, had woven a fabric of growth and resilience in him. It dawned on him that the world was full of moments just waiting to be embraced, even the uncomfortable ones. They could lead to transformations beyond imagination, igniting potential hidden in the shadows of doubt. And in that moment, as he stepped into what felt like a bright future, Caleb understood that every journey begins with a single choice: to press on, to rise above, and to shape your destiny. Caleb stood in the busy lobby, anxiously adjusting his tie. Every tick of the clock felt like thunder in his ears. Today was pivotal. Today he would pitch his startup idea to some of the most influential investors in the industry. A tall, glass-fronted building shimmered around him, symbolizing everything he wanted to achieve. Yet there he stood, a bundle of nerves trying to steady his racing heart. Suddenly the atmosphere shifted. The double door slammed open, and in strode Samantha, the lead investor known for her razor-sharp critiques and no-nonsense attitude. As she walked in, the air thickened with tension. Dressed in a sleek navy suit, her heels clicked sharply against the marble floor with each determined stride. She was a formidable presence, an unyielding figure who held the power to make or break dreams. Caleb felt the blood drain from his face when she locked her steely gaze on him. He had heard of her reputation, that she could dissect a pitch in seconds, leaving the presenter reeling. She shouted, her voice booming across the lobby like a thunderclap. "What are you doing standing around?" He opened his mouth to respond, but words failed him. Instead, he felt shame wash over him like a tide. Every ounce of confidence that had built up over countless sleepless nights preparing for this moment evaporated in an instant. Caleb had spent months honing this pitch, fueled by dreams of making a difference, but here he was under assault in front of a gathering crowd. Samantha pressed, stepping closer. "You look like you're about to faint." As every eye in the lobby turned towards him, the whispers began. Caleb wanted to disappear. He could almost hear the crowd muttering, watching him crumble under the pressure. What was he thinking? The dream of launching his app now felt like a fantasy slipping through his fingers. But just as doubt overwhelmed him, the heavy double doors swung open again. Out stepped Jonathan Miles, the legendary founder of the company. A man whose name alone commanded respect. He was a visionary whose startups had shaped the very landscape Caleb aspired to join. "Caleb," Jonathan called out, his voice warm and inviting, cutting through the tension like a comforting balm. He approached Caleb, exuding authority and confidence. For a moment, everything else fell away. Jonathan paused, took a quick look at Samantha, who momentarily faltered, and then smiled at Caleb. A surge of hope coursed through Caleb as Jonathan extended his hand. In that moment, it felt like the whole universe shifted. Caleb's heart soared. "Thank you, Jonathan," he replied, finding his voice again. Samantha was momentarily speechless. The temperature in the lobby shifted. The tension loosened as Jonathan's towering presence melted away the frost that had settled over Caleb just moments before. "Caleb here has been working on an intriguing project," Jonathan said, glancing back at the young entrepreneur. Caleb took a breath, the weight of Jonathan's encouragement sending fresh waves of adrenaline through his veins. He seized the moment, standing a little straighter, feeling the support buoy him. He began to talk about his app, a platform designed to connect people through shared experiences and interests. In a world so driven by technology, we often neglect genuine human connection. "This app will not only link people but inspire them to create real relationships," he explained, his passion igniting with every word. Samantha shifted her stance, leaning in slightly as if the flame of Caleb's enthusiasm was starting to draw her in. "Interesting concept," she murmured, her voice a pitch softer, though her critical gaze remained. Caleb sensed the challenge, and rather than flinch, he welcomed it. "That's exactly why our focus is on authenticity. We're merging technology with the power of emotional connection." As he spoke, he noticed Jonathan nodding along, encouraging him silently with an approving smile. Caleb pressed on, explaining the details of the user experience, the algorithms that would prioritize meaningful connections, and the potential for community building. Samantha's sharp features began to soften. She wasn't fully sold yet, but the crowd had shifted. The earlier judgment seemed to dissolve into curiosity. "And what about metrics?" "You'll need solid data to support your vision," she said, albeit with a less critical tone. "Absolutely," Caleb replied, gaining momentum. "We've set up metrics and KPIs based on user engagement and retention." As he continued, the pitch morphed into a conversation. The pressure of the audience transformed into a supportive backdrop. Even the whispers that had once surrounded Caleb felt distant. He was no longer a kid fumbling through a dream. He was a confident, passionate entrepreneur standing on the brink of something monumental. When Caleb finished speaking, the applause erupted by default, fueled by Jonathan's earlier enthusiasm. The energy crackled in the air, and for the first time, Caleb saw genuine interest reflected in Samantha's expression. "Okay," she said, crossing her arms thoughtfully. "There's potential here. You've sparked my interest." "Of course," Caleb said, a grin breaking through the earlier tension. Jonathan clapped him on the back, turning to the guests with an invigorating spirit. "This is what disruption looks like." Caleb felt the tide turning. Samantha, though forthright and still measuring, was less of a critic and more of a mentor now. "Let's talk strategy," she said, her tone assertive yet constructive. "But you need to remember, every step counts." Caleb nodded, feeling the weight of her words as he saw the potential for learning rather than just adversarial confrontation. A new respect began to form within him, not just for Samantha, but for every challenge that had layered into this moment. Weeks flew by and Caleb dove deep into the work. The initial shock of that day in the lobby had been a catalyst for new growth. He and Samantha began collaborating closely, challenging one another and pushing boundaries. She tested his limits, prompting him to think critically and strategically. But Caleb also learned to express his own ideas, choosing to stand firm in his vision while opening himself to constructive criticism. The once feared investor slowly transformed into a mentor who pushed him to refine every aspect of his project. With Jonathan's support, they secured meetings with potential partners, diving into data, projections, product designs, and marketing plans. Each session saw Caleb growing not just as a businessman but as a voice of change, ready to disrupt the norm. As they labored side by side, an unexpected camaraderie blossomed. Samantha's sharp edges softened. Caleb learned there was much to admire about her fierce determination, seeing that beneath her tough exterior was an unyielding drive for excellence. One day, as they combed through market research, she paused, studying him closely. "You know, I didn't see it at first, but I think you have something special, something that can genuinely resonate with people. You remind me of why I love this industry. Keep that spirit." Caleb's heart warmed at her words, the validation sparking a deeper sense of purpose. He and Samantha worked late into the night, gears turning, laughter mingling with serious discussions. They made mistakes, learned lessons, and ultimately built a foundation fueled by mutual respect. Then came the day of the big presentation, a moment that would mark the culmination of months of hard work. The same lobby that had once felt like a battlefield now transformed into a stage for possibilities. Standing backstage, Caleb felt the adrenaline rush. He was ready. With the support of his mentors, he was no longer the anxious young man from that fateful day. He could feel the passion coursing through his veins, igniting a sense of purpose he had never known before. As he stepped onto the stage, lights flooded the room, and he spotted Jonathan and Samantha in the crowd, their expressions laden with pride. With a deep breath, he began his presentation. This time, the words flowed like a river of emotion and determination. He spoke of the impact their app would have, how it could heal the loneliness that so many carried quietly. The audience hung on to every word as Caleb poured his soul into conveying not just the data, but the heart behind their mission. As applause erupted around him, Caleb felt a catharsis wash over him. The journey from that lobby confrontation to this moment was a powerful testament to resilience and transformation. Each challenge had forged him, molding him from a timid dreamer into a confident leader. After the presentation, as he stepped off the stage, he was met by Jonathan, who beamed with pride, followed closely by Samantha. Jonathan exclaimed, gripping his shoulder. Samantha stepped forward, her expression genuinely impressed. "You really knocked it out of the park. I underestimated your vision, and I'm glad to have been part of this journey." The warmth of her words felt like a blanket of acceptance. Caleb realized that the very moment that had once felt crushing had propelled him into a world of growth, mentorship, and partnerships. It was an experience that reshaped his understanding of feedback and determination. Stepping outside, the sun bathed him in warmth. The world felt right, filled with endless possibilities. He turned back, glancing at the vast building that had once seemed so intimidating. It was no longer a fortress of dreams, it was a launching pad for transformation. Caleb understood now that setbacks and challenges didn't mark the end, but rather paved the way for something bigger, something profound. His journey was just beginning, but he was ready to embrace every twist and turn, knowing that he had grown from the naive entrepreneur in the lobby to a resilient dreammaker. As he walked away, he held on to the lessons learned, the power of perseverance, the strength in partnerships, and the profound beauty in facing one's fears. With every step, Caleb felt unstoppable, a shining example that sometimes the fiercest storms could lead to the brightest futures, lighting the way for others to follow. Caleb stood nervously in the lobby of a towering skyscraper, the chill of the air conditioning wrapping around him like a cold blanket. Today was the day, his moment to shine. He looked around, eyes darting over the sleek, polished floors and the bustling crowd of investors. Heart pounding, he adjusted his tie for what felt like the 100th time. He had prepared tirelessly for this pitch, pouring his heart into his business idea, but the weight of it all pressed heavily upon him. Then it happened. The double doors at the far end of the lobby swung open, and in strode Samantha, the lead investor infamous for her sharp tongue and unsparing critiques. She was formidable, a force to be reckoned with, and the atmosphere shifted instantly. It felt as if the air had thickened, as whispers and murmurs around the room faded into a tense silence. She snapped, locking her penetrating gaze onto him as if he were the only person in the crowded lobby. "What are you doing standing here?" He felt a wave of heat rush to his cheeks. He stammered, but he could hardly get the words out, they caught in his throat. She continued, moving closer with a fierce intensity. You look like you might faint. Caleb felt his stomach drop. The embarrassment burned bright, and he wanted nothing more than to shrink away into the floor. He had read that Samantha could tear apart pictures with a single glance, but to be on the receiving end of that wrath was another level of terror. The lobby, which only moments ago had felt like the gateway to his dreams, now felt like a cage. People were staring, and he could almost hear their whispers. Just breathe, he thought to himself. But the words fell flat in his mind, suffocated by doubt. Just as he felt ready to crumble, the double doors swung open again. Out stepped Jonathan Miles, the founder of the organization, a man admired by all. His confident stride and warm presence cut through the tension like a knife through butter. As he walked into the lobby, it was as if the entire building illuminated. Jonathan's voice boomed, his smile radiating positivity. Caleb's heart soared. In that moment, Jonathan became the eye of the storm, a glimmer of hope in the chaos. The crowd parted as Jonathan approached, and Caleb instinctively straightened his posture. "Thank you, Jonathan," Caleb replied, feeling a rush of adrenaline course through him. Let's allow Caleb to present his idea," Jonathan interjected, glancing at Samantha before turning back to Caleb. Samantha stood there, momentarily speechless, her authority deflated. In the face of Jonathan's presence, the tide began to turn. Caleb felt his confidence surge as Jonathan's belief in him transformed the negativity around him into something more supportive. As Caleb began to discuss his app, designed to foster genuine connections and relationships in an increasingly isolated world, he drew on the passion that had driven him to pursue this dream. In a time when technology often leaves us feeling lonely, this app connects people based on shared interests and experiences, he explained, his voice gaining strength with every word. Samantha's guarded expression softened for just a moment, her curiosity piqued. "Interesting concept," she said, leaning in slightly. Caleb sensed the challenge and welcomed it rather than shied away. "That's the essence of what we're doing. It's about more than just matching users, it's about creating meaningful experiences." As he spoke, he could feel Jonathan nodding along, affirming Caleb's insights with his encouraging presence. The crowd that had once seemed intrigued by Samantha's contempt now leaned in, captivated by Caleb's burgeoning passion. "We're implementing features that prioritize genuine interactions and provide a platform for users to cultivate meaningful friendships. This isn't just another app, it's a movement to bring people together," Caleb continued, feeling the energy shift toward his favor. "Okay," Samantha said, crossing her arms as she assessed him. "That's all well and good, but what about metrics?" For a moment, Caleb felt the weight of her scrutiny again, but he remained grounded, bolstered by Jonathan's earlier encouragement. "Absolutely. We have KPIs in place based on user engagement and a clear roadmap for growth." Samantha listened intently. The sharpness that had colored her voice before became more curious as she kept her eyes on him. The disdain faded slowly, replaced by a flicker of respect. "You've obviously put thought into this, but I still have questions about funding," she pressed, though her tone no longer felt accusatory. Caleb seized the opportunity. "Of course, we've identified potential investors who are aligned with our values." The discussion flowed naturally, each question drawing Caleb further into a conversation that felt alive and engaged. He realized that Samantha no longer viewed him as merely a target. Instead, she was genuinely assessing the potential of this project. As he finished his pitch, silence enveloped the lobby. Caleb's heart raced. He felt both exhilarated and vulnerable, laying his vision bare before them. Finally, Jonathan broke the stillness. "Caleb, I'm genuinely impressed. Your passion is palpable, and there's a definite need for what you're offering." The applause that erupted felt almost surreal. The tension that had once gripped the space melted away, replaced by an atmosphere charged with potential. Samantha, arms still crossed, addressed Caleb. "All right, I'll admit it, I see potential here." Caleb nodded enthusiastically. "Absolutely." The meeting drew to a close. As the crowd began to disperse, Caleb felt a mix of relief and achievement. He had not only faced his fears, but turned a moment of intimidation into a stepping stone for growth. Weeks flew by as Caleb delved into the preparations. The experience in the lobby had ignited a fire within him. Working closely with Samantha and Jonathan, he honed his business model. Samantha's sharp critiques pushed him to think strategically, while Jonathan's steady encouragement provided the support he needed. Caleb found himself growing more confident, learning to assert his ideas while actively collaborating with his mentors. Samantha, through her tough love approach, pushed him beyond his limits. They tackled everything from market research to refining user experience. One evening, as they sat discussing projections, Samantha paused and looked at Caleb thoughtfully. "You know, I didn't see it at first, but you have something special here. Your vision matters." Caleb felt a swell of gratitude. They were no longer just colleagues, they were allies in a shared mission. The once competitive dynamic transformed into mutual respect, where they encouraged each other to reach greater heights. As the launch date approached, excitement tinged the air. Caleb prepared for the big day, the stakes higher than ever. The same lobby that had once felt like a place of judgment now buzzed with anticipation. Each pitch rehearsal filled him with adrenaline and purpose, and as the launch day arrived, he felt fearless. Standing on stage, Caleb scanned the crowd. Jonathan and Samantha were in the front rows, their supportive gazes steadied him. With a deep breath, he unleashed his passion, sharing not just the technicalities but the heart behind the app to heal the loneliness that plagued so many in a digital world. As the applause rolled in, he realized the journey had transformed him in ways he never expected. That chance encounter in the lobby had unleashed something powerful within him, a determination to rise against adversity and embrace every challenge. After the presentation, Jonathan met him with a grin. "You did it, Caleb," Samantha followed, and to Caleb's surprise, she actively engaged him, her eyes sparkling. "Incredible job, I didn't expect to be so impressed." Caleb couldn't hold back a wide smile. He had turned the initial confrontation into a fruitful partnership, learning to embrace both criticism and support. He felt transformed from that timid young man into a confident leader, ready to make an impact. As they stood together discussing the next steps, Caleb realized he was not just embarking on an entrepreneurial journey. He was shaping a community of connections, of relationships built on authenticity. Outside the building, the bright sun warmed his face, and for the first time in weeks, he felt a weight lift. The journey was far from over, but he was ready for whatever came next. That moment in the lobby was more than a beginning. It was a powerful reminder that every setback could lead to triumph when met with courage. As Caleb walked away from the towering building, he felt alive with possibility, knowing that the path ahead was filled with the potential to craft connections that would change lives, and he was ready to embrace it all, one connection at a time. Caleb stood nervously in the marble lobby of a towering skyscraper, the chill of the air conditioning cutting through his crisp suit. Today was the day he had worked tirelessly towards, a culmination of late nights and endless rehearsals. His heart raced as he scanned the crowded room filled with investors, all seemingly too engrossed in their conversations to notice him. Everything felt surreal, and a wave of anxiety crashed over him. Just moments ago, he had envisioned himself standing confidently on that stage, pitching his innovative idea for a community-building app. But now the immense weight of expectation felt like a boulder pressing down on his chest. Suddenly, the heavy doors swung open with a dramatic thud. In walked Samantha, an investor known for her sharp critiques and fiery disposition. She strode into the room, and a hush fell over the crowd. Like a whirlwind, she swept through the lobby, her heels clicking against the floor like an executioner's gavel. She shouted, her voice full of disdain that cut through the quiet air. "What are you doing just standing there?" Her eyes blazed, locking onto his, and Caleb felt his heart plummet. The attention of the room shifted to him, and he felt embarrassment flood his cheeks. "I am ready," he stammered, but the words felt weak, swallowed by her fierce presence. She snapped, taking a step closer, her gaze piercing through him. "You look like you're about to faint." Caleb struggled to find his footing. Today was supposed to represent his dreams, yet now it felt like a nightmare, caught in a web of her scorn. He had rehearsed this pitch countless times, but standing in front of her, all confidence faded, replaced by a whirlwind of self-doubt. Just when he thought he might crumble beneath her intensity, the doors swung open again. Out marched Jonathan Miles, the founder of the company, a man whose reputation preceded him. His presence illuminated the lobby, radiating warmth and authority. "Caleb," Jonathan's voice boomed, cutting through the tension like a knife. The crowd parted as he approached, and Caleb felt a sudden rush of hope. Here was the man who could change everything, the one who could lift him from the clutches of humiliation. "Thank you, Jonathan," Caleb replied, his voice finding its strength again. "I really appreciate. Let's give Caleb the chance to present his idea," Jonathan said, turning to the audience with a firm yet encouraging smile. Samantha blinked, momentarily taken aback. The air shifted, the insurmountable pressure began to lift. Caleb steadied himself, encouraged by Jonathan's presence. "All right, let's hear what you've got," Samantha said, now slightly calmer but still scrutinizing. Caleb could feel the weight of expectation on his shoulders, but Jonathan's faith in him burned bright. He took a deep breath, channeling the urgency and excitement that had driven him to create this Apple platform designed to build real-life connections in a world so often consumed by digital isolation. "In today's world, people feel more disconnected than ever," Caleb began, his voice gaining momentum. "App aims to bridge that gap." As he spoke, the apprehension began to seep away. Caleb could see the crowd leaning in, captivated by his words. Jonathan nodded approvingly, a silent affirmation that bolstered Caleb's resolve. "Imagine a space," he continued, "where users can meet based on their passions, whether it's hiking, book clubs, or cooking." Samantha's expression shifted slightly. She was listening now, her arms crossed but less aggressively. She asked, her tone inquisitive rather than combative. "Great question," Caleb replied, eager to provide clarity. "We're focused on quality interactions over quantity. Our app will facilitate meaningful connections, prioritizing depth instead of just numbers." The crowd murmured, intrigued. The energy in the room was palpable, shifting from skepticism to genuine interest. Caleb sensed Jonathan's approval behind him, and a flame ignited within him. As we launch, he added, we'll implement feedback mechanisms to ensure user satisfaction and engagement. Samantha nodded. Still, you'll need concrete metrics and a solid plan for growth. For a moment, doubt flickered in Caleb's mind. Could he really pull this off? But he stood tall, bolstered by Jonathan's encouraging presence. Absolutely. We have a thorough business plan, including projections based on extensive market research and user feedback metrics. The crowd began to react, intrigued by Caleb's conviction. Even Samantha, once a looming adversary, seemed impressed. Her tough exterior softened as she realized that Caleb was not going to back down easily. All right, she said, leaning in, her voice thoughtful. If you're serious about this, you'll need to demonstrate your ability to adapt and respond to challenges. Caleb felt the shift. Once a harsh critic, Samantha now seemed to be sizing him up like a possible ally. I'm ready for that, he replied, the confidence resonating in his voice. The room buzzed with energy as Caleb concluded his pitch. The assembled investors exchanged glances, the air thick with anticipation. Caleb felt the rush of exhilaration as applause erupted around him. Jonathan grinned widely, clapping Caleb on the back. Fantastic job, Caleb. Samantha approached him as well, her demeanor unexpectedly warm. You've got a spark, Caleb. Relief washed over him, and the oppressive weight of earlier moments began to lift. He had turned a confrontation into collaboration, transforming the lobby from a scene of humiliation into a launchpad for opportunity. Days turned into weeks, and Caleb poured himself into the project, working closely with Jonathan and Samantha. She pushed him, questioned him, but also mentored him, guiding him through the labyrinth of startup culture. Each challenge he faced felt more like a stepping stone than a barrier. Slowly, their working dynamic transformed. Caleb found himself growing more confident, willing to assert his ideas in meetings and discussions. Samantha, with her fierce intellect, was a mentor who continuously unveiled layers of understanding. One late evening, as they labored over projections, Samantha turned to Caleb with a thoughtful expression. You've shown resilience, she said. I didn't believe in your vision at first, but your tenacity has convinced me. Caleb felt a swell of gratitude. They were no longer just colleagues, they were partners in this ambitious journey. The once intimidating figure that challenged him had become an ally, and he realized that her earlier scorn had pushed him to rise above the self-doubt he had fought for so long. As the launch day approached, excitement buzzed in the air. The same lobby that had felt so daunting was now a space teeming with anticipation. Each meeting with potential investors felt less like an examination and more like an opportunity to share a movement. Standing backstage on the day of the launch, Caleb felt a mix of exhilaration and nerves. He had rehearsed this moment countless times, but now it was real. The crowd was filled with potential partners and investors, all eyes on him. Just breathe, he thought, looking at Jonathan and Samantha in the front row. Their unwavering support was like a warm blanket around him. As he walked onto the stage, floodlights brightened the room, illuminating the audience. With a deep breath, he began sharing his vision, the pulse of his message resonating through each carefully chosen word. He spoke of the impact his app could have, the lives it could change, how it could heal the loneliness that many carried silently. The crowd listened intently, their engagement palpable as he poured out his heart. With every word, he felt more at home. When the applause erupted, Caleb felt a rush of warmth. He had transformed that challenging moment in the lobby, turning it into a celebration of growth and determination. The journey had molded him, sharpening his resolve while illuminating his path. After the presentation, Jonathan and Samantha greeted him, their faces alight with pride. Outstanding, Caleb, your passion shone through, Jonathan said, clasping his shoulder. Samantha chimed in with encouragement, her expression now genuinely supportive. I didn't expect to be so impressed. You've really connected with the audience. The momentum surged as Caleb absorbed their words, feeling a sense of accomplishment wash over him. What had begun as a moment of confrontation had blossomed into friendship and mentorship, and he stood on the brink of something he had always dreamed of. As he stepped outside the building, the sunlight bathed him in warmth, illuminating a future bright with possibilities. Caleb turned back to glance at the skyscraper that had once loomed large and intimidating, now appearing as a beacon signaling the onset of his journey. He had faced challenges, wrestled with doubt, and emerged victorious. That experience in the lobby had not only shaped his future, but it also illuminated the transformative power of perseverance and resilience. Walking away with a heart full of gratitude, Caleb embraced the potential that lay ahead. He had not only created an app, but had also forged relationships that could change lives. With every step, he felt stronger, ready to face the world, knowing that each challenge he encountered would only further illuminate his path. And in that moment, he understood the powerful truth. Sometimes, the fiercest storms lead to the brightest mornings. Caleb stood in the imposing lobby of a high-rise office building, his heart pounding in his chest like a drum. The gleaming chrome and glass around him felt like a fortress, a battleground for dreams waiting to unfold. Today was supposed to be his moment, the day he would pitch his innovative idea to a panel of investors who held the keys to his future. As he fidgeted with his notes, he glanced at the towering digital clock on the wall. The seconds seemed to stretch on forever. People in sharp suits filtered in and out, their laughter filling the space while Caleb hung back, trying to steady his racing thoughts. Then, without warning, the atmosphere shifted. The large glass doors swung open, and in walked Samantha, the lead investor known for her fierce demeanor and even sharper tongue. All eyes turned to her instantly. The drama that followed was electric, like the build-up to a thunderstorm. With every click of her heels against the marble floor, Caleb felt the air thicken around him. She shouted, her voice booming with authority. It cut through the conversations like a hot knife through butter, and he felt every gaze in the room turn toward him. "What are you doing just standing here?" The color drained from his face as he swallowed hard. "I'm just preparing to," he began, but the words caught in his throat, suffocated by her intensity. She interrupted, a scowl etched across her features. "This is not a dress rehearsal. You look like you're about to pass out." Caleb felt humiliated, the heat rising to his cheeks as he stood frozen. His dreams, which had once shimmered with promise, began to dim under her glare. He had spent countless hours perfecting his pitch, rehearsing every word, yet here he was on the verge of crumbling before a crowd. But just as calamity loomed, the heavy doors swung open again, this time with a sense of gravity. Out stepped Jonathan Miles, the founder of the company, a man whose reputation was legendary. He exuded confidence, the kind that commanded respect and admiration. Jonathan's voice rang out, his eyes sparkling with warmth. Caleb's heart soared at the sound of Jonathan's voice. It was as if a sudden ray of sunlight had broken through the cloudy torment in the lobby. With Jonathan's presence, the air shifted, and the tension morphed from hostile to hopeful. "Thank you, Jonathan," Caleb managed to say, feeling a surge of confidence he desperately needed. Just behind Jonathan, he noticed Samantha's expression hardening as if she were recalibrating herself. "Jonathan, I'm just making sure Caleb here is prepared for the serious nature of this pitch," Samantha said, her tone tightening again as she redirected her scrutiny. Jonathan turned to Caleb, his eyes softening. "Let's hear your pitch, Caleb." With that encouragement, Caleb felt the breath of life return to his lungs. The weight of expectation transformed into something lighter as he grasped his notes and took a step forward. In that moment, he remembered why he had embarked on this journey. "I've created an app that aims to connect people not just through screens, but through shared experiences," he began, the energy of his words rising. In this age of technology, we often overlook the importance of human connection. The words flowed more freely now as he painted a vivid picture of a world where users could connect over shared interests. Samantha listened closely, her expression shifting from skepticism to curiosity. "Well, that sounds promising," she said, her voice laced with intrigue. Caleb seized the opportunity. "That's a key point. We're focusing on quality over quantity. Our platform will prioritize meaningful interactions rather than the superficial connections so common nowadays." He could tell he had Samantha's attention now, which fueled his passion. Every word felt like a stepping stone laying the path to his dreams. "Our research shows that people are craving deeper connections." As he continued, Jonathan stood behind him, nodding in approval, while the initial crowd of skeptics began leaning closer, captivated by Caleb's fervor. The weight of impossible expectations was fading, replaced by the thrilling prospect of possibility. Just as Caleb concluded, silence fell over the lobby. It was as if the world had paused to absorb everything he had shared. Then Jonathan broke the spell with a clap, his voice booming in affirmation. "Excellent job, Caleb." Samantha's expression began to soften. "You've certainly made a compelling case," she acknowledged, though her tone still carried an edge. "But let's talk about your strategy for funding and scalability." Caleb's heart raced, but he stood tall, ready to answer her challenge. "Absolutely. We've mapped out our financial projections, and we've already had discussions with potential partners who share our vision." As he spoke, Caleb noticed the look of contemplation on Samantha's face. Her sharp demeanor was fading, replaced by curiosity and perhaps a hint of respect. The conversation evolved, flowing naturally as Caleb and Samantha exchanged ideas. He realized in that crowded lobby that her role had shifted from an antagonist to a constructive force. Caleb felt empowered not just by his own words, but by Jonathan's unwavering presence behind him. For the first time, he braved the distance from timid newcomer to ambitious entrepreneur. When the session wrapped up, the collective applause filled the air, wrapping around him like a warm embrace. Caleb felt exhilarated, on top of the world. Jonathan approached, leaning in with enthusiasm. "You did fantastic, Caleb." Samantha followed closely, her expression surprisingly supportive now. "Let's explore the next steps." Relief flooded Caleb as he acknowledged their encouragement. The feeling of transformation surged through him. He had faced his fears and turned confrontation into collaboration. Weeks rolled into a whirlwind as Caleb engaged in relentless preparation. Working closely with Jonathan and Samantha had bolstered his resolve and confidence. He found himself diving deep into the world of business strategy, crafting plans, and honing his pitch. Samantha challenged him through incisive critiques, guiding him through the intricacies of startup culture. She pushed him to think critically, while Jonathan's unwavering support instilled a sense of courage. Together, they forged a path, and Caleb began to look forward to their meetings. The once feared Samantha transformed into a mentor, and as they collaborated, respect blossomed into a powerful partnership. One late evening, as their discussions wound down, Samantha turned to Caleb with a smirk. "You've surprised even me," she admitted. "I didn't see your vision at first, but you've won me over." Caleb savored her words, feeling gratitude wash over him. The dynamic had shifted. They were more than just colleagues now, they were a team on a shared mission. Then came the day of the launch, the moment Caleb had envisioned countless times. The lobby that had once felt like a battlefield now buzzed with anticipation. The energy was electric, and as Caleb stood backstage, the adrenaline surged through him. "This is it," he whispered to himself, glancing at his notes one last time. He spotted Jonathan and Samantha in the audience, their encouraging smiles fortifying him. They had gone from apprehension to this moment of triumph. As he stepped onto the stage, the lights brightened and he faced the crowd, each eye locked onto him. This time he was ready. Caleb dove into his presentation, speaking with passion about the app, sharing how it could forge connections that would heal the loneliness that many faced. He illustrated the potential impact, igniting sparkles of interest in the audience. But just as he was about to wrap up, the doors burst open again. In strode a tall figure, disruptive and commanding. It was another investor, someone Caleb recognized but had never expected to see here. Mark Decker, a titan in the industry known for investing in groundbreaking technologies. The audience's attention shifted dramatically, whispers of surprise floating around the room. Caleb's heart sank for a moment. How could he compete with Mark's presence? "Apologies for the interruption," Mark announced with a charismatic grin, "but I couldn't miss this pitch." Caleb's pulse quickened. This could change everything. The stakes had suddenly risen. Just as he tried to regain his focus, Jonathan whispered from the side, "Keep going, Caleb." Taking a deep breath, Caleb summoned every ounce of courage he had left. This was a moment he couldn't back down from. He pushed through his nerves and finished his presentation, the audience captivated. But as the applause thundered in his ears, he felt a jolt of panic. Would Mark want to invest? Was he too late? Would he overshadow everything he had built? Samantha stepped forward to address Mark, her tone shifting back into business mode, their competitive spirit ignited. "Mark, this is Caleb." Caleb watched as they began exchanging words, his mind racing with questions, hope battling uncertainty. This wasn't just about the pitch anymore, it was a crossroads, a chance to seize a moment or watch it slip away. Mark turned his charismatic gaze to Caleb, a teasing smile playing on his lips. "I'm intrigued by the potential here." Caleb swallowed hard. The moment hung in the air, electrifying and terrifying. Were he and his dreams at the mercy of someone else's interest? As he stepped forward, his heart pounding, he felt the weight of everything on his shoulders. Would this be the moment everything changed, or would it all come crashing down? The room seemed to hold its breath, a cacophony of futures poised to be written in an instant. And just like that, Caleb found himself standing at the edge of a cliff, one step away from destiny itself.